Today we are going back to talk about one of our favourite elven characters, Thranduil, also known as the Elven King. Being a prominent figure in the outcome of the Battle of the Five Armies, many people wonder why he was not a featured figure during the War of the Ring. Well, let's find out why.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
So after the destruction of Beleriand and the War of Wrath, most of the Noldorin exiles and remaining Sindar elves retreated to Lindon. The Valar had invited them to come back to Aman, but Thranduil was amongst those that refused the offer and remained in Lindon. Thranduil's father Orifer travelled to Greenwood the Great, and it was in the Second Age, around 750, that he was taken up by the Elves of the Wood as their king and founded the Woodland Realm. Originally, Orifer's realm encompassed the south of Greenwood. However, throughout the Second Age, he migrated north with his people 3 times. According to one tradition, the first movement was northward beyond the Gladden Fields, due to his desire to distance himself from the increasing encroachments of the dwarves of Khazad-dûm, and his resentment of the intrusions of Celeborn and Galadriel in Lothlorien. Orifer was also disturbed by the reports of Sauron's rising power, and by the end of the Second Age, he dwelt in the western glens of Emenduir, and his people lived and roamed in the woods and vales westward as far as Anduin. After this, very little is recorded of either Orifer or Thranduil's dealings over the next few thousand years, right up until the Battle of the Last Alliance. It was in the year 3434 of the Second Age that the Elves of Mirkwood joined the Alliance. In the Battle of Dagorlad, Orifer was slain in the first assault upon Mordor. Orifer had the wisdom to foresee that peace would not return unless Sauron was overcome. He therefore assembled a great army of his now numerous people, and joining with the lesser army of Malgalad of Lorien, he led the host of the Sylvan Elves to battle. The Sylvan Elves were hardy and valiant, but ill-equipped with armour or weapons in comparison to the Eldar of the West. Also, they were independent, and not disposed to place themselves under the supreme command of Gil-galad. Their losses were thus more grievous than they need have been, even in that terrible war. Malgadad and more than half of his following perished in the Great Battle of Dagorlad, being cut off from the main host and driven into the Dead Marshes. Orifer was slain in the first assault upon Mordor, rushing forward at the head of his most doughty warriors before Gil-galad had given the signal for the advance. Thranduil, his son, survived, but when the war ended and Sauron was slain, as it seemed, he led back home barely a third of the army that had marched to war. So, upon his return to the Woodland Realm, Thranduil was crowned the new king. Then, upon the return of Sauron, disguised as the Necromancer, in around 1050 of the Third Age, southern Greenwood became increasingly dangerous. Evil creatures such as the Great Spiders came to dwell in it, and the forest soon became known as Mirkwood. Thranduil's folk retreated to the north of the forest, where they established themselves near the Forest River. Thranduil then had his halls delved underground, fashioned partly in memory of the mighty but long-lost Menegroth of Doriath. Then in the year 2941 of the Third Age, Thranduil and some of his folk were feasting in the woods when they were repeatedly disturbed by a party of dwarves. After the third disturbance, the elves captured Thorin, who refused to reveal to Thranduil the reason for their journey through Mirkwood. The dwarves, of course, eventually escaped the elves' captivity with the help of Bilbo Baggins and his new ring. After the dwarves' escape, Thranduil received word of what had transpired from the elves who returned from up the Forest River. Thus he was now aware of the quest of the dwarves. Upon learning this, he stated, "No treasure will come back through Mirkwood without my having something to say in the matter." He believed the dwarves were incapable of slaying the dragon. However, he soon heard from his own messengers that the dragon Smaug had been killed and that Lake Town had been destroyed. Thranduil was aware that Smaug had a massive hoard of treasure. Believing the dwarves to be dead, and desiring his own share in the treasure, he set out towards the Lonely Mountain with a company of elves. On the way, they met messengers of Bard, who were seeking aid for their destroyed town. Thranduil did give aid to these men, as the Lake Men had been friends with the Wood Elves for a while. He even left them elven craftsmen to aid in the labour and building of their huts to fortify them against the coming cold winters. Then together, Thranduil and Bard led their forces towards the Lonely Mountain, and were surprised when they found out that the dwarves had not only survived Smaug's attacks, but had taken possession of the mountain and its treasures. The Battle of Five Armies followed, and after many orcs, men, dwarves and elves had fallen, the battle was eventually won. The victors decided to divide the treasure, with Bard giving Thranduil the Emeralds of Girion. When Bilbo and Gandalf said farewell to Thranduil, Bilbo gave him a necklace of silver and pearls. Thranduil gave the Hobbit the title Elf Friend, and returned with the remainder of his host to his realm in Mirkwood. Now this of course brings us up to the time of the War of the Ring. Why did King Thranduil and his armies not support the other Free Peoples in their time of need? Well, it begins in 3018, when Aragorn and Gandalf delivered an important prisoner to the Elven King, Gollum. It was decided that Gollum would be safe in the prisons there, but after Gollum soon escaped, this was clearly not the case. Anyway, Thranduil sent his son Legolas to Rivendell to inform Elrond of the prisoner escape, but then, during the Council of Elrond, Legolas was selected to be one of the 9 members of the Fellowship of the Ring. Another member of this fellowship was of course Gimli, who was the son of Gloin, who happened to be one of the party of dwarves that had been imprisoned in Mirkwood years earlier. The eventual friendship between Legolas and Gimli played a big role in helping reconcile Thranduil's people and the dwarves. Now, if we say that the Battle of the Pelennor Fields was the main battle of the War of the Ring, you would expect a player as mighty as Thranduil to have some involvement. And you'd be right. The thing is, Sauron also knew this. So on the 15th of March 3019, the exact same day that Sauron attacked Gondor, he also sent his army from Dol Guldur to attack Mirkwood. There was a long battle under the trees and the woods were set on fire, but in the end, Thranduil and his armies were victorious. So without this assault, there is certainly a chance that the Wood Elves would have been involved in the big assault on Gondor, but who really knows? Then, after the full defeat of Sauron, the forces of the Lord and Lady of Galadrim stormed Dol Guldur and threw down its walls, finally cleansing the forest. Then, on the 6th of April, which happened to be the first day of the Elven New Year, the Elven King met with Celeborn in the midst of Mirkwood and renamed it Erin Las Gallen, or the Wood of the Greenleaves. With the forest cleansed and Sauron's forces destroyed, the forest was divided. Celeborn claimed the southern part of the forest north of the Narrows, and Thranduil took the northern part of the forest south to the mountains, and the 2 elven lords granted the middle to the Beornins and Woodmen. Thranduil ruled the re-established Woodland Realm well into the 4th Age. King Thranduil's eventual fate is actually never told, but I would safely assume that he did eventually sail west like the rest of his kin. So my question for you guys today is this. If Sauron had not sent a force from Dol Guldur to Mirkwood, would Thranduil have gone to the aid of men? I would love to hear your theories and reasons in the comments down below. Okay, time has come as always to thank our patrons. A special shout out goes to the members of our highest tiers, Lorenzo, Nasheath, Devasteel, Gregory and Andrew, and our special limited tier on Patreon, Kevin, Abram, Matt and Glorfindel of Gondolin. You guys are of course all executive producers on our film, and we have been over the moon with the feedback you guys have provided on the script so far. In case you aren't aware, all of the support on Patreon goes towards the funding and the budget of our short film that we are currently working on. All of you guys that have continued to support us over the last few months, we can't thank you enough. The support means so much to us. So as always, thank you to each and every patron and viewer of this channel. A quick reminder to go and check out our other channels, The Sixth Ranger and History of Dragon Ball, for some Power Rangers or anime lore. The links will be in the description if they are of any interest to you. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Middle-earth content. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.